I've had the pleasure of knowing Dr. Gottemoeller for over 15 years. She, of course, is the Deputy Secretary General of NATO. She brings great experience in the U.S. State Department, in the United States National Security Council staff, and the Department of Energy. Her last position was Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Security, where she was in the State Department for 5 years. She brings great experience in European affairs, NATO affairs, and arms control to her post. And we have the pleasure of having her today talk to us about NATO and the NATO-Georgia relationship. You mentioned the progress that the Georgian military has made in increasing its capabilities, westernizing its military capabilities, bringing them to NATO standards. And you also mentioned early in your statement about the important contribution Georgia is making in Afghanistan. In light of those efforts, in light of those sacrifices and contributions, isn't it high time for Georgia to get MAP? And if not MAP, are there alternative mechanisms or instruments that ought to be pursued to further underscore NATO's commitment to support Georgia's aspirations to join the alliance?
Well, I made reference in my opening remarks to the substantial package of assistance that NATO has put in place to strengthen Georgia's defense and its ability to work in the alliance. As we see it, there is still work for Georgia to do. I mentioned the general areas of defense institution building and reform. Those are very, very high priorities and areas where we are doing our best here at NATO headquarters to be as effective and as efficient as possible in helping Georgia to build up those capabilities. I do want to give a shout out, though, to areas where Georgia has accomplished so much in recent years in its professionalism, in the professionalization of its armed forces, and particularly in Afghanistan, the importance of the Special Operations Forces, the SOF forces that Georgia has been able to bring to bear in Afghanistan. We saw that a couple of months ago in the way that Georgia was key to preventing a disaster with regard to the German consulate in Kandahar. So there's a lot of contributions that Georgia is making, and the combination of our work that we are doing together and the work that Georgia is doing to take responsibility for its defense and security, I think this is really putting it in a positive momentum for continuing to work with NATO.
Thank you, Rose. And as an American, I always want to express my gratitude to Georgia for always being front and center in NATO operations. Now, I'm going to turn the floor over to our audience. If I turn my back to you, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to figure out who's raising their hand. So who would like to give a question to the Deputy Secretary General? Anybody? You have a rare moment here.
It seems to be frozen. I don't think it's an active.
Okay. All right. Well, that leaves me an opportunity. Rose, looking forward to Zapad, what are you watching for in this exercise? What has NATO done to prepare itself for this exercise, to ensure that it's getting as much insight into it, also to ensure that it isn't exploited for any revanchist ambitions that Putin may have?
We've had a watchword with regard to the Zapad exercise, and that watchword is we have to be alert but not overreact. And that is exactly the kind of posture that NATO has undertaken. And by alert, I mean very serious actions to ensure that our intelligence and warning capabilities are up and going, and that we're watching very, very carefully to ensure we understand what is happening as Zapad is unfolding. But in that context, we want to take account of the fact that although Russia has been in a very threatening stance toward countries around its periphery in recent years, nevertheless, this is part of an exercise cycle that takes place every couple of years. And so, in our view, there's no need to overreact to it, but it is important to be alert and to be watching every move.
Greetings, I'm Rati Bakhtadze from Georgia, And my question is like direct. Do you see Georgia as a guarantee of energy security for the Europe? Like for the another way to give the Europe the energy security and guaranteed? Thanks.
Thanks. Rose, could you hear that?
Would you mind just repeating the question? I know it's about energy security, but please repeat it.
I'll paraphrase.
How do you see Georgia's role in contributing to energy security for the West?
Well, obviously, Georgia has been part of the pipeline network and one that has offered alternatives for bringing energy supplies, gas and oil, out of Central Asia to markets in the West. And for that reason, Georgia is an important additional link in the chain that provides critical redundancy and the ability of countries to get the energy supplies they need, not requiring anybody to depend on a single source, and particularly Russia in recent years has been very difficult to deal with, and at times has cut off energy supplies to important countries in Europe and to Ukraine itself. So we see Georgia's role in helping to provide for energy security as being a very important one.
Thank you. We have one additional question.
Greetings, Secretary General. My name is Batu Kutelia. I'm representing Atlantic Council of Georgia. We hosted several major military exercises together with the United States and the NATO allies in Georgia recently. One of the functions of this exercise was increasing Georgia's role in the regional security on the Black Sea, as well as increasing the capacity of Georgian armed forces to defend our own country. So how you would assess this current achievements, what are the lessons learned, and what would be Georgia's function on the Black Sea?
Thank you very much. We are looking at the roles of all the Black Sea littoral states in providing for security in your region of the world, and the ongoing professionalization of the Georgian Armed Forces, including its maritime elements, has been very important. We sometimes think perhaps that too much attention is being paid to enhanced forward presence to the east and north. We're proud of the fact that there are 4 battle groups that are now formed and certified in the Baltic states and Poland. They have all, in a remarkably quick time, been certified since the Warsaw Summit just over a year ago. But often we forget that we have also forward presence measures that are called tailored forward presence measures around the Black Sea, involving the NATO members around the Black Sea, Bulgaria, Romania, and Turkey, providing for strengthening of NATO's capabilities in the Black Sea. And we welcome very much working together with Georgia, with Ukraine as well, on improving Black Sea security. And that goes, as I said, for all the littoral states. I think it's a very important contribution that Georgia's been making in this regard.
Rose, I'm going to close with 2 questions. One's contemporary and one is looking forward. The one focused on today and now concerns U.S. commitment to NATO's Article 5. A theme that has permeated this conference has been whether or not President Trump is fully committed to NATO's Article 5. How do you assess European confidence, allied confidence, in the aftermath of the President's visit to Brussels earlier in the year, and more recently his visit to Warsaw in July?
I think it was very important, first of all, that the reason the President was here on May 25th was actually to dedicate, in addition to getting to know his fellow leaders in the NATO alliance, but it was to dedicate the so-called 9/11 Memorial, which is known here at NATO as the Article 5 Memorial, because it's the only time in the history of this alliance that Article 5 has actually been invoked. And so the President, we feel by his actions here, took an important step to reconfirm U.S. commitment. Now, there were questions afterwards. Maybe it wasn't for some clear enough. So actually for NATO allies, I will say that the speech he made afterwards in Warsaw early in the summer was very, very important in terms of re-emphasizing the U.S. commitment to Article 5. So frankly, this has become something of a non-issue, I would say, to be perfectly honest, in the ensuing months, as our attention has turned particularly to the real bread and butter work of this alliance, ensuring, for example, that we are ready with the battle groups. They are all certified properly, and that we are prepared, alert, and ready for the upcoming Zapad 17 exercise. So we're focused on the honest, no kidding, day in, day out business of the alliance. But I would say that the U.S. commitment to Article 5, having been reiterated, is now not a subject of discussion in these corridors.
Thank you. And my last question concerns the future. NATO is expected to hold a summit in 2018. From your perspective, what will be the likely foci, issues, deliverables that will define that summit? And how should Georgia think about how it can most effectively promote its interests in the planning and execution of that summit?
The summit in 2018 will definitely build on both Wales and Warsaw, taking forward the key tasks that NATO set for itself in the course of those two summits, really putting in place deterrence and defense capabilities, and also then working to project stability and develop in particular our approaches toward countering terrorism. But in that context, there are many issues that will come to bear in the 2018 summit period. One is the question of defense burden sharing. Are we doing enough? There are important issues with regard to our relationship with the European Union, but also very much front and center will be our relationship with our partners. It will be very important, I think, for us not only to be ready to engage our partners in the course of that summit meeting, but for partners to be ready and willing to come to the table, whether it's to talk about, again, the future of resolute support, and we expect that will be a focal point where many partners of the NATO alliance are involved, or whether we are talking about NATO's open door policy. So there will be many issues that engage the partners and involve the partners. I know Georgia will be one of them during that summit in 2018.
Well, Mr. Secretary General, thank you so much. Rose, it's so good to see you, to bring all your experience and insight and wisdom to NATO operations and to the promotion of NATO values. It's great to see you there, and thank you so much for sharing your time this evening.
My pleasure, and again, just sorry I couldn't be there with you. It would have been a lot more easy, but thank you, Ian, for your chairmanship of this session. It was great to see you too. All the best.